The meta is finally starting to settle, so I thought it would be a perfect time to have a look at the best meta decks in patch 1.8. Unlike my top 10 video, these are purely the best decks on paper this patch, not taking into account the win rate, which is typically lower for metal decks, as beginners tend to unsuccessfully attempt them. There's one deck lots of you have been expecting to see on this video, but will it make the list? This is Best Meta Decks Patch 1.8. This video has been done in collaboration with Bomber TV. So today I'm going to start off with a Nightfall themed deck. It consists of cards from Targon and Shadow Isles and features Diana and Nocturne. This deck is very aggressive and has a reflective average mana cost, with 32 cards costing 3 or below. This deck has a somewhat strange pace. You usually start the first turns by passing and banking mana, only to later unleash a ton of Nightfall threats. It's important to keep your Nightfall activators, which are Lunari Dustbringer, Solari Soldier, and Stalking Shadows, in your hands. These are Nightfall activators as they're the cards that don't actually have the Nightfall effect, therefore they get value out of being played first in the round, unlike most of the other cards in this deck. Fading Memories is by far the strongest Nightfall activator as it costs 0 mana. Even if you don't play the ally you're copying, 0 mana Nightfall triggers are insane, so therefore are times when even if you go first and you have a 1-drop, you could actually be passive, as this will translate to even more Nightfall triggers later on. Nightfall triggers are so valuable because the Nightfall effects can be devastating. Diana can remove 1 unit per attacking turn, whilst Nocturne should be used more as a finisher combined with other cheap units to make all blocking units unable to block fearsome and basically deliver an unblockable one-shot. Every aggressive deck in Runeterra should have at least one bit of burn, and this role is filled perfectly by Doom Beast, Unspeakable Horror, and Atrocity. The last one is the best combined with Nocturne or a Nightfall buff Diana, so make sure you use Atrocity at the right time. Lux Leona Control is another deck featuring a new champion. It's themed around Daybreak and expensive spells. Like most control decks, it has a very varied mana cost, with spells and followers costing all the way from 1 mana to 8 mana, with 12 costing 5 mana. That's crazy for a control deck. It features almost a 50-50 split of cards from Targon and Demacia. This is a standard control deck. With Leona and her cheap Daybreak unit, you can fend off most of the threats coming your way, just from the very first turn. A leveled up Leona can punish your opponent for developing, as you can basically stun their units as you like with Leona, and it's a fantastic effect and probably one of my new favourite effects in the champions that were released this patch. On the other hand, Lux is a great finisher combined with her expensive spells like Star Shaping, Remembrance, and Concerted Strike. Judgment is one of my favourite cards in the game. It can also be very committal and very badly countered if your opponent chooses to remove the judging unit, but always is a threat that the opponent should be watching for, and it can be an absolute game changer, as most of you are definitely aware. Use Guiding Touch, Star Shaping, and Concerted Strike on Radiant Guardian to keep her alive as long as possible, maximising the number of times you can use her 5-powered lifesteal. This is just one of the examples of the survivability in this deck, making it less vulnerable to burn archetypes. Overall, this deck's only weaknesses are mid-range decks, which are not so present in the meta at the moment, so therefore this deck has a really high win rate. And also something to consider before picking this deck is that the games are actually pretty long, so therefore you're going to be winning lots of games, but you're not going to be climbing the ranks quickly. Up next is Swain Twisted Fate, which consists of cards from Noxus and Bilgewater. It has a strangely low average mana cost for a control deck, with most cards costing between 2 and 3 mana. This is due to the deck being a mix of a burn and a control deck. It's a more expensive deck with actually 7 epics in total, which is way above average. This deck actually had at one stage the highest win rate in patch 1.8, and a variant of this featured in my previous top 10 video. Twisted Fate is a great card to stall either to AoE to a wide board, or to stun and set up removal for big threats, or even as a proactive move by drawing cards and discounting him. Swain is your finisher, but only if combined with the Leviathan, which is much more important than Swain himself, giving you a way to trigger easy Nexus damaging trigger effects basically. The other cards are pretty straightforward and basically just removal tools that you need to use in order to level up Swain. A notable card I want to talk about is Nocturne Guillotine, as it's so easy with this deck to damage to something using Twisted Fate's red card, or make it rain, to the point where you can spend a turn to remove their board, and given an average you're going to be removing something which costs more than 3 mana, you get the upper hand in that trade. Leviathan is much more important to draw rather than Swain, as Swain alone won't get through most of the times, and you'll just get the occasional stuns from Nexus damage spells, while the Leviathan, every turn you can stun half of your opponent's board, and Swain will easily connect, further destroying your opponent's board. Even if it doesn't, the Leviathan will slowly and steadily kill your opponent, and it is such a fun way to win that Ray, effectively putting your opponent on a timer. This deck has been around for a while now in one form or another, and actually has a top 10 win rate in this patch that I talked about in my last video. Scouts has been a staple since the release of Bilgewater. This deck has an incredible curve, benefiting from all the great units coming from Demacia. It's effectively a mono Demacia deck, featuring 3 copies of Misfortune. On the mulligan, you always want to keep Misfortune and Quinn, as both of those are key cards in the deck, but it's also important to have 1-drops, such as Fleet Feather Tracker in particular. You want to level up your champions as quickly as you can, which is why you always want to attack with your scouts, even if they would die meanwhile. You also have lots of ways to generate value thanks to your tricks. Ranger's Resolve to counter AoEs to get those value trades on the wide blocks, and Single Combat to remove their key cards, often getting a value trade by doing that. Riposte is a fantastic way to shield from removal and deal bonus damage, and Back to Back, which is amazing to cast on your scout units as they benefit from double the amount from bonus to the attack. Here is another deck which actually featured in the top 10 win rates this patch, and this deck is Pirate Aggro. Pirate Aggro got more popular in the last stages of the last season, and it's still a worthy contender as its burn capabilities work well against mid-range and control decks, and he still was a good matchup against Aggro Miros. The cards in the deck are from Noxus and Bilgewater, with a staggering 32 cards costing 3 or less. Misfortune will have a very hard time leveling up, and is here just as a more consistent way to level up Gangplank, to make your boards more threatening also when you attack. Gangplank can end the game against wide boards, and therefore making Aggro Miro much easier, as we said previously. This deck has a lot of ways to end the game with burn, like the usual Crimson Disciple into Imperial Demolitionist, or burn dedicated spells like Nox and Favor and Decimate. This is a pretty solid deck, and a fast one, definitely a nice option to rank with, but as you will see, there were better options to go for aggro wise, so if you do like quicking aggressive decks, this may be the one for you, but keep watching. And there we go guys, hope you enjoyed this video. I know a lot of you are expecting to see Aurelion Salto appear here. The truth is, he isn't actually one of the best decks around at the moment, as he's very easy to counter if you have a quick aggro deck. This analysis has been done by Bomber TV. He's a Masters tier player and very knowledgeable on deck studying, so please check out his channel. What deck are you having the most luck with so far in patch 1.8? I would love to hear in the comments. Up next will be top 10 decks patch 1.10. Yes, they are missing out patch 1.9. The writer promised us a huge buff and nerf session, so I cannot wait to see what cards they're affecting from the Targon release, and what older cards that have been bumped into the meta for one reason or another through new cards. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.